On number 5, we have a paint can that's in the shape of a right circular cylinder. We're given the volume of the paint can and we're given its altitude. Remember, altitude is just another word for the height of the cylinder. So those can be used interchangeably. So in part A, it says find the radius in inches of the base of the paint can and express the answer in simplest radical form. So since I'm given the volume, I know the formula for the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h. It's that circular area, height, number of times filling up that cylinder. So I'm going to use the volume formula along with the information I'm given. The volume is 600 pi, so that goes in for the V, and I'm given the height, the altitude, which is 12 inches. So that allows me to get an equation with only one variable in it. So again, I notice I have pi on both sides of the equation that I can divide out. So now I have 600 equals 12r squared. So I can get the r squared isolated by dividing both sides by 12. And I get r squared equals 50. And I know I can undo squaring by taking the square root. 50 is not a perfect square, so I don't just get a nice little integer, and I can't put the square root of 50 in my calculator and round it because it tells me to leave it in simplest radical form. So typically you guys simplify using your factor tree, splitting up 50 into 2 times 25. 2 is prime, 25 is not, and separates into 5 times 5. So whatever you have the pair of, which is a pair of 5s, that goes outside the radical, and what's left over is inside the radical. So the simplified form would be 5 square roots of 2. Remember, you should be able to get the square root of 50 as a decimal in your calculator and 5 square roots of 2 as a decimal in your calculator and get the same decimal. That's a good way to check and make sure that you simplified your radical correctly. Now don't forget your units on this. We have our units on the volume given as cubic inches. So I know my radius would be in inches. So my radius is 5 square roots of 2 inches. On part B, it says to find the lateral area of the paint can in terms of pi. So it's not wanting the surface area of the whole cylinder, just the lateral area part, which remember is the area of this rectangular face that surrounds the cylinder. So the length of the cylinder's rectangular face goes around the circle, so that's the circumference, 2 pi r, and the width of that rectangle is the height of my cylinder. So lateral area formula that you need to know is 2 pi r h. So we don't have the plus 2 pi r squared part because we're not including the ends of the paint can. So now I know the radius is the 5 square roots of 2, and I was given my height in the problem to be 12. So I can find the lateral area by multiplying 2 times pi times the 5 square roots of 2 times the height of 12. Now we don't have any rounding instructions, so remember you don't put the irrational parts into your calculator. So you don't enter the pi or the square root of 2 in your calculator. You're only going to multiply 2 times 5, which is 10, and 10 times 12, which is 120. And then you can either put the pi next or the square root of 2. I usually put the square root of 2 and then the pi square inches, or you could have 120 pi square roots of 2 square inches. The order doesn't matter because all of that is multiplication. So again, don't put in the radical part or the pi in your calculator or it'll force you to round at that point. Leave those out so you have an exact answer.